For 3 years, Daniel thought he'd finally found peace living in the modest two-bedroom house on Maple Street with his wife, Rachel, and their baby daughter, Emma. He'd wake up every morning, make breakfast for his family, and head to work at the construction company where he'd been promoted to site manager. Life wasn't perfect, but it was his. What he didn't know was that his mother-in-law, Patricia, had been telling everyone in the neighborhood that the house belonged to her daughter, that Daniel was just living there rent-free like some kind of freeloader. And on one humid Tuesday afternoon, when Rachel was out shopping and Daniel came home early from work, Patricia would make a decision that would expose a web of lies so tangled, so deliberately cruel, that it would destroy a marriage, shatter a family, and reveal the kind of manipulation that happens behind closed doors when someone believes they have all the power. But before we continue with this beautiful story, please kindly subscribe to this channel and comment where you are watching from, and also share below. What life or relationship challenge are you facing right now? Or what someone you know is going through? Don't forget to like this video as well. Let's get this story to 10,000 likes. For real, all these mean a lot to us. Daniel pulled into the driveway at 2 in the afternoon, exhausted from the morning shift. The site had wrapped early because of equipment issues, and all he wanted was a cold shower and maybe a nap before Emma woke from her afternoon sleep. He grabbed his lunchbox from the passenger seat and headed for the front door, keys already in hand. That's when he heard Patricia's voice coming from inside, sharp, agitated, talking to someone. He paused with his key halfway to the lock. Patricia wasn't supposed to be here. Rachel had mentioned her mother might stop by later in the week, but today was Tuesday. Rachel had taken Emma to the pediatrician for her 6-month checkup. Daniel opened the door quietly. The living room was empty, but Patricia's voice carried from the kitchen, and she was definitely on the phone. "Yes, I need police here immediately," Patricia was saying, her tone dripping with false panic. "There's a man trying to break into my daughter's house. I'm here checking on things while she's out, and this man just pulled into the driveway. No, I don't know who he is. He looks dangerous. Please hurry." Daniel stood frozen in his own entryway, his brain struggling to process what he was hearing. His mother-in-law was calling the cops. On him, in his own house. He walked into the kitchen. Patricia spun around, her eyes widening for just a fraction of a second before her face transformed into a mask of righteous anger. "The intruder just came inside," she said into the phone, backing toward the counter. "He's here now. Please hurry." "Patricia, what are you doing?" Daniel's voice came out calmer than he felt. "This is my house. Why are you calling the police?" "Your house?" Patricia laughed, sharp and bitter. "This house belongs to my daughter. You don't own anything, Daniel. You're just the man who married her." Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest. "I bought this house 2 years before I even met Rachel. My name is on the deed, mine alone." Patricia's expression didn't change. "Liar. Rachel told me everything. She said you moved into her house, that she's been supporting you while you play construction worker." "Rachel told you what?" The cold feeling spread through Daniel's entire body. "Why would she say that?" "Because it's true." Patricia's chin lifted. "And now you're going to leave before the police arrive and arrest you for trespassing." Daniel pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking, but his voice stayed level. "I'm calling Rachel." "Don't you dare," Patricia snapped. "You leave my daughter alone." But Daniel was already dialing. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Rachel's voice came through, distracted and slightly annoyed. "Hey, what's up? We're still at the doctor's office." "Rachel, your mother is here, at the house. She called the cops on me and told them I'm an intruder." Silence, long enough that Daniel thought the call had dropped. "Rachel? Why would my mother do that?" Rachel's voice had changed, careful now, measured. "She says you told her this is your house, that I don't own it, that you've been supporting me." Another pause, longer this time. "We'll talk about this when I get home," Rachel said finally. "Talk about what?" Rachel, this is my house. I bought it with my savings before we even met. You know that. Daniel, I really can't have this conversation right now. Emma is fussing, and we're about to go in for shots. Your mother called the police on me in my own house. Daniel's voice cracked. What did you tell her? Rachel sighed, that particular sigh she used when she thought he was being unreasonable. I told her the truth, Daniel, that we live together in this house. If she misunderstood something, that's not my fault. Misunderstood? Daniel looked at Patricia, who was watching him with a small, satisfied smile. She thinks she can have me arrested for being in my own home. Well, maybe if you'd been more welcoming to my family, we wouldn't be having these problems, Rachel said. I have to go. Emma's crying. The line went dead. Daniel stared at his phone. 3 years of marriage, a baby daughter, a home he'd worked overtime for years to afford, and his wife had just hung up on him while her mother called the cops. She's not coming to save you, Patricia said. My daughter deserves better than a man who can't even provide a proper home for his family. I provided this home, Daniel said quietly. I bought it. I pay the mortgage. My name is on every document. Patricia's smile widened. Prove it. If you're enjoying this story so far, pause and comment, I am enjoying this story below. The police arrived 12 minutes later. 2 officers, one older with gray at his temples, one younger and clearly hoping this wouldn't turn into paperwork. They knocked and Patricia rushed to open the door before Daniel could move. Thank God you're here, Patricia gasped, clutching her chest. This man forced his way into my daughter's house. I was just checking on things while she's out, and he became aggressive. The older officer looked past Patricia to where Daniel stood in the kitchen. Sir, do you live here? Yes, this is my house. I own it. He's lying, Patricia cut in. My daughter Rachel owns this house. She's married to this man, but the house is hers. He's trying to intimidate me. The younger officer pulled out a notepad. Ma'am, can you prove this is your daughter's house? Patricia hesitated for just a second. She has papers, documents. I've seen them. And you, sir? The older officer looked at Daniel. Can you prove ownership? Daniel nodded. All my documents are in the office upstairs. Deed, mortgage statements, property tax records. Everything has my name on it, just mine. He could have forged those, Patricia said quickly. My daughter told me he's been acting suspicious, controlling. She's afraid of him. Daniel felt the world tilt. Rachel was afraid of him? They'd had arguments, sure. What married couple didn't? But afraid? I'm going to need to see those documents, the older officer said. Both of you wait here. Daniel led him upstairs to the small office he'd converted from the second bedroom. The room still smelled like fresh paint from when he'd surprised Rachel by finishing it 2 months ago. He pulled open the file cabinet and extracted the folder labeled House Documents. The deed was on top, clear as day. Purchased September 2020. Owner, Daniel James Morrison. No other names. The officer flipped through the mortgage statements, the property tax bills, the homeowner's insurance policy, all in Daniel's name, all paid from Daniel's bank account. This all looks legitimate, the officer said. Original purchase date is 3 years before you even got married, according to these dates. Because it is legitimate, Daniel said. I don't understand what's happening right now. They walked back downstairs. Patricia was pacing in the living room, her phone pressed to her ear. She looked up as they entered, her eyes narrowing when she saw the folder in the officer's hands. Ma'am, the older officer said, his tone considerably cooler now. Mr. Morrison has provided documentation proving he owns this property. The deed is in his name alone, purchased years before his marriage. Do you have any documentation supporting your claim that this house belongs to your daughter? Patricia's mouth opened and closed. She told me. My daughter told me she bought this house. That's not documentation, ma'am. That's hearsay. But she wouldn't lie to me. Patricia's voice rose. Why would my own daughter lie to me? The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. Is it possible there was a misunderstanding? No, Patricia pointed at Daniel. He's manipulating all of you. My daughter would never lie about something like this. He's done something, changed the documents somehow. The older officer's expression hardened. Ma'am, falsely reporting a crime is a serious offense. You called 911 and reported an intruder. That was a lie. It wasn't a lie. This isn't his house. The legal documents say otherwise. The officer turned to Daniel. Sir, do you want to press charges for filing a false police report? Daniel looked at Patricia. She was breathing hard, her face flushed. But beneath the anger, he saw something else. Confusion. Genuine confusion. Like she really believed what she was saying. No, Daniel said quietly. I don't want to press charges. She's my wife's mother. You're sure? I'm sure. The officers exchanged glances. The older one handed Daniel a card. If you have any more problems, call us. And sir, you might want to have a serious conversation with your wife. After they left, Patricia stood in the middle of Daniel's living room, her arms crossed, her face set in stubborn lines. Rachel told me this was her house, she said. She told me she was taking care of you, that you couldn't afford your own place. Why would she say that? I don't know, Patricia's voice cracked, but my daughter doesn't lie to me. Daniel felt a headache building behind his eyes. You need to leave now, Patricia. This isn't over, she said, grabbing her purse. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. She slammed the door on her way out. Daniel stood in the silence of his home, the home he'd saved for years to buy, the home he'd been so proud to bring Rachel to after their wedding, the home his wife had apparently told her mother belonged to her. His phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. On our way home, we need to talk. Daniel sat on the couch, his head in his hands, and wondered what kind of talk they were about to have. Because one thing was suddenly, terrifyingly clear. Either his mother-in-law had completely invented a story, or his wife had been lying to her family about their entire life together, and he was about to find out which one it was. Rachel walked through the door 40 minutes later, Emma in her car seat carrier, diaper bag over her shoulder. She looked tired. Emma was crying, probably from the shots. Let me put her down, Rachel said without looking at him. Then we'll talk. Daniel waited. He heard Rachel's footsteps upstairs, the soft murmur of her voice as she soothed Emma, the creak of the crib. When she came back down, her face was carefully blank. Your mother called the cops on me, Daniel said. In my own house. Rachel sat in the armchair across from him, not next to him on the couch. She told me. She called right after you did. And? And she was wrong, obviously. Rachel folded her hands in her lap. She shouldn't have done that. Rachel, why does your mother think you own this house? I might have let her believe that. The words hung in the air between them. Might have let her believe. Not told her directly, but not corrected her either. Why? Rachel looked away. Because my mother is very traditional. She believes men should provide for their families. And when we got married and moved in here, she kept asking questions. Whose house is this? How can you afford this? Is he taking care of you properly? So you lied. I didn't lie, Rachel said sharply. I just didn't correct her assumptions. She thinks I'm a freeloader living in your house. She tried to have me arrested, Rachel. I know, Rachel's voice rose, and I'm sorry about that, but you don't understand what it's like having her constantly judge my choices. Every decision I make, she questions. When I told her I was marrying you, she said I was settling, that I could do better, that a construction worker wasn't good enough for me. Daniel felt like he'd been punched. And you never told me this. Because I didn't want to hurt you. Because I love you and I didn't care what she thought. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. So yes, I let her think I had bought this house, that I was the successful one providing for us, because it made her shut up about my choices for once. But I did provide this house, Daniel said quietly. I worked 60-hour weeks for 3 years to save for the down payment. I was so proud when I could finally buy it, and you told your mother it was yours. It's not about pride, Daniel. It's about keeping peace in my family. What about our family? What about the peace in this house? Daniel stood up, unable to sit still anymore. Your mother just tried to have me removed from my own home. Do you understand how that felt? Standing there while she called me an intruder? Rachel wiped her eyes. She went too far, I know that. She went too far because you let her believe a lie for 3 years. They stared at each other across the living room. Emma's cries filtered down from upstairs, soft and tired. I'll talk to her, Rachel said finally. I'll tell her the truth. Will you? Daniel heard the bitterness in his own voice. Or will you just let her keep believing what makes your life easier? Rachel stood up. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Rachel. I just got interrogated by police in my own house because my wife has been lying about our life. I was protecting us. From what? From your mother knowing the truth? That I'm a good man who worked hard to build a life for us? Daniel's voice broke. You were protecting yourself, Rachel, not us. You were protecting yourself from your mother's judgment. The truth of it settled over them both. Rachel's face crumpled. I'm going to check on Emma, she whispered, and fled upstairs. Daniel sank back onto the couch. Through the window, he could see the yard he'd landscaped himself, the porch he'd rebuilt when the wood rotted, the driveway he'd repaved last summer. Every inch of this property had his sweat and work in it, and his wife had given the credit to herself. His phone buzzed again. A number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer, but something made him press accept. Daniel Morrison? An unfamiliar woman's voice. Yes? This is Jennifer Chen from First National Bank. I'm calling about the mortgage on your property at 847 Maple Street. Daniel's stomach dropped. Is something wrong with my mortgage? We received a call today from someone claiming to be the property owner, asking about refinancing options and inquiring about adding a name to the deed. I'm calling to verify that you initiated this inquiry. No, I didn't call you. Can you describe the person who called? I don't know who called you. The caller identified herself as Rachel Morrison and claimed to be the sole owner of the property. She had some of your personal information, but became agitated when we asked for documentation. I'm calling to make sure there isn't identity theft or fraud occurring. Daniel closed his eyes. Rachel Morrison is my wife. She's not the owner, just me. I see. Sir, I need to inform you that your wife attempted to add her name to your deed without your knowledge or consent. That's a serious matter. She did what? She called claiming to be the sole owner and wanted to refinance, but when we ran the verification checks, your name came up as the only owner. She then changed her story and said she wanted to add herself to the deed. We informed her that would require your signature and consent. She became quite upset. Daniel felt the room spinning. When did this call happen? About 2 hours ago. 2 hours ago, while Rachel was supposedly at the pediatrician's office with Emma, while her mother was calling the cops on him. Thank you for letting me know, Daniel managed. I'll handle this. He ended the call and sat staring at his phone. Rachel hadn't just let her mother believe a lie. She'd tried to make it true. She tried to add herself to his house deed without pulling him. Footsteps on the stairs. Rachel appeared, her face puffy from crying. Emma's asleep, she said softly. Daniel, I'm sorry, I really am. I'll call my mother right now and tell her everything. Did you call the bank today? Daniel asked. Rachel froze on the bottom step. What? First National Bank. Did you call them about refinancing the house? The color drained from Rachel's face. They called you? Answer the question. Rachel gripped the banister. I was just looking into options. We've talked about refinancing before. We talked about it together, as a couple, because it's my house and my mortgage. Daniel stood up. Rachel, did you try to add your name to the deed without telling me? Silence. The kind that confirms everything. I wanted to surprise you, Rachel said finally, her voice small. I thought if I could refinance at a lower rate, and add my name, it would be like the house was really ours, together. By lying to the bank and saying you were the sole owner, I didn't lie. I explained it wrong. You tried to steal my house, Daniel said, and the words felt unreal coming out of his mouth. You and your mother. She was here trying to get me arrested, and you were on the phone trying to forge documents. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Rachel? Explain it to me. Make it make sense. Rachel wrapped her arms around herself. My mother has always made me feel small, like I'm not successful enough, not accomplished enough. When we got married, she kept saying I was making a mistake, that you'd never amount to anything, that I'd end up supporting you forever. So you decided to prove her right by actually taking everything from me? No, I wanted to prove her wrong. I wanted to show her that I was successful too, that I could provide, that marrying you didn't mean I was settling. Tears streamed down Rachel's face. But then the lie got bigger and bigger, and I didn't know how to take it back without looking like I'd been lying to her for years. You had been lying to her for years, Daniel said, and today you tried to lie to the bank. Where does it stop, Rachel? I don't know, she whispered. I don't know. They stood there in the home Daniel had built, the home he'd filled with dreams of their future together. Emma's soft breathing came through the baby monitor. Somewhere outside, a car drove past. Normal sounds of a normal evening in a normal life. Nothing was normal anymore. I need you to leave, Daniel said quietly. Take Emma and go stay with your mother, the one who thinks I'm a criminal, the one you've been lying to so you could feel better about yourself. Daniel, please. Leave, Rachel, before I say something I can't take back. Rachel stumbled up the stairs. He heard her moving around in the bedroom, heard Emma's sleepy protest as Rachel picked her up. 10 minutes later, his wife and daughter walked past him and out the front door. Daniel stood at the window and watched Rachel strap Emma into the car seat, watched her drive away from the house he'd bought, the house he'd thought would hold their family for decades. And he wondered how everything had fallen apart so fast over something as simple as the truth. But maybe it wasn't simple at all. Maybe the truth was the most complicated thing in the world when someone you loved had built a castle of lies around it. His phone buzzed, a text from his brother Marcus. Hey man, haven't heard from you in a while. Everything good? Daniel stared at the message. Everything good? His marriage was collapsing. His mother-in-law had tried to have him arrested. His wife had tried to steal his house. His daughter was gone. He typed back, No, nothing's good. Can I call you? Marcus answered on the first ring. What happened? Daniel told him everything. The lies, the police, the bank, the fight. Marcus listened without interrupting, and when Daniel finished, his brother was quiet for a long moment. You know what you have to do, Marcus said finally. What? Protect yourself. Document everything. Get a lawyer. Because Rachel just showed you who she really is, and it's not the woman you married. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to say Marcus was wrong, that this was just a misunderstanding, that they could fix it, but he couldn't, because Marcus was right. The woman he'd married wouldn't have lied to her family for 3 years, wouldn't have tried to add her name to his house without permission, wouldn't have let her mother call the police on him without immediately correcting the situation. I don't want to get divorced, Daniel said. We have a baby. I know, but you also can't stay married to someone who tried to commit fraud against you. That's what this was, Danny, fraud. If the bank had approved it, she would have had legal claim to half your house without your consent. Daniel pressed his forehead against the cool window glass. How did this happen? I don't know. But you need to figure out what happens next. After he hung up, Daniel walked through his empty house. Each room held memories. The bedroom where Emma was conceived. The kitchen where he'd proposed to Rachel over homemade lasagna. The bathroom where Rachel had told him she was pregnant, her hands shaking with joy. Had any of it been real? Or had she been performing the whole time, playing the role of happy wife while resenting that she had to live in his house instead of her own. His phone rang, Rachel's number. He almost didn't answer, but then he thought of Emma. Hello? Daniel. Rachel's voice was thick with tears. My mother kicked me out. What? I told her the truth, about the house, about everything, and she said I was a liar and a disappointment, and she couldn't believe I deceived her like that. She told me to leave. Daniel should have felt satisfaction, justice even, but all he felt was tired. Where are you? In my car, at a gas station. Emma's crying and I don't know where to go. You can come home, Daniel heard himself say, but we're sleeping in separate rooms, and tomorrow we're talking to a lawyer. A divorce lawyer? I don't know yet, maybe a marriage counselor, maybe both, but this can't continue the way it is. Okay, Rachel's voice was so small. Thank you. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for Emma. She deserves to sleep in her own crib. I know. Come home, Rachel. He ended the call and stood in the hallway, looking at the photos on the wall. Their wedding day, Rachel pregnant and glowing. Emma's newborn pictures. A family that looked happy from the outside, but was rotting from the inside out. The front door opened 20 minutes later. Rachel came in carrying Emma, who was indeed crying, her face red and splotchy. Daniel took his daughter and held her close, breathing in her baby smell. I'll sleep in the guest room, Rachel said quietly. Daniel nodded. He carried Emma upstairs and changed her diaper, fed her a bottle, rocked her until she settled. When he put her in her crib, she grabbed his finger with her tiny hand and held on tight. I'm going to fix this, he whispered to her. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to make sure you grow up in a home where people tell the truth. In the guest room down the hall, he could hear Rachel crying. Part of him wanted to go to her, to comfort her the way he had for 3 years. But a bigger part of him knew that comfort would be a lie too. Because right now, he didn't trust his wife. And a marriage without trust was just two strangers sharing a space. Daniel went to his bedroom, his empty bedroom, and lay down on his side of the bed. The sheets smelled like Rachel's shampoo. The pillow beside him still had the indent from her head. Tomorrow they would start figuring out what came next. Tomorrow they would face lawyers and counselors and hard conversations. Tomorrow they would decide if their marriage could survive a lie this big. But tonight, Daniel just closed his eyes and tried to remember what it felt like when he'd believed in the woman sleeping down the hall. When he'd trusted that they were building something together instead of watching her slowly take it apart. And outside his window, the house stood solid and strong. His house, the one he'd worked for, saved for, bought with his own sweat and sacrifice. The house no one could take from him, no matter what lies they told. At least he still had that. Rachel appeared in the doorway at 6 the next morning. Daniel was already awake, had been for hours. He'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios in his head. Emma's up, Rachel said. I fed her. Okay. Daniel, can we talk? He sat up. Isn't that what we're doing? Rachel came into the room and sat on the edge of the bed, keeping distance between them. Her eyes were red and swollen. I need you to understand something. I'm listening. My mother has controlled my entire life. Every choice I've made, she's had an opinion on. What I studied in college, where I worked, who I dated. When I told her I was marrying you, she said I was throwing my life away. Rachel's hands twisted in her lap. She said you'd never be successful, that you'd drag me down, that I'd regret it. So you spent 3 years proving her right by pretending I was exactly what she said I was? No. I spent 3 years trying to make her see that I could be successful, even if you weren't rich. That I could take care of myself. Rachel looked up at him, her eyes pleading. I know it was wrong. I know I hurt you, but I was trying to maintain a relationship with my mother while also defending my choice to marry you. By making me look like a loser who couldn't provide for his family. I never said that to her. You didn't have to. You told her you owned the house. What else was she supposed to think? Rachel was quiet for a moment. She was supposed to think I was smart, capable, not the disappointment she's always made me feel like. Daniel felt a flicker of sympathy, but it was buried under layers of betrayal and hurt. Rachel, I understand having a difficult mother, but you didn't just lie to her. You tried to add your name to my house without my knowledge. That's not about your mother. That's about you and me. I know, Rachel's voice cracked. I was scared. Of what? That you'd leave me, that things would fall apart and I'd have nothing, that my mother would be right about everything. She wiped her eyes. When she kept insisting the house was mine, part of me started to believe it should be, that I deserved it for putting up with her judgment. And then I convinced myself that adding my name to the deed would just be making official what should have been true all along. If you're enjoying this story so far, pause and comment, I am enjoying this story, below. Daniel shook his head slowly. We've been married 3 years, Rachel. If you wanted your name on the house, you could have asked me. We could have talked about it like adults, like partners. Would you have said yes? I don't know, maybe, probably eventually. But now I'll never know because you didn't give me the chance to say anything. You just tried to take it. The words hung heavy in the morning air. Emma's babbling came through the monitor, happy sounds that felt surreal against the conversation happening in their bedroom. So what happens now? Rachel asked quietly. I don't know. I meant what I said last night. We need to talk to someone. A counselor at minimum. Maybe a lawyer. I don't want a divorce. Neither do I, but I also don't know if I can trust you anymore. Daniel's voice was raw. Every time you're on your phone, I'm going to wonder if you're calling the bank again. Every conversation with your mother, I'm going to wonder what lies you're telling. That's not a marriage, Rachel. That's a prison. Rachel stood up abruptly. I'll fix this. I'll tell my mother everything again. I'll make her understand. I'll do whatever it takes. Your mother already knows the truth and she kicked you out. What else is there to tell her? I'll make her apologize to you. I don't want her apology, Daniel said. I want to understand why my wife became someone I don't recognize. Rachel's face crumpled and she walked out of the room. Daniel heard her go into Emma's nursery, heard the soft sounds of morning routine. He got up and got dressed mechanically, his mind still spinning. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Marcus and 1 from his own mother. He called Marcus back first. How are you holding up? His brother asked. I've had better nights. Rachel came back. She's here now. And I don't know what to do. She explained why she did it, but the explanation doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't. Marcus paused. Look, I know you love her, but love isn't enough when someone violates your trust like this. You need to protect yourself. How? She's my wife. We have a daughter together. Start by documenting everything. The police report from yesterday, the bank's call, everything Rachel told you. Get it all written down. That feels like I'm building a case against her. You are, Marcus said bluntly, because if this marriage ends, you need to make sure you don't lose everything you work for. Daniel knew his brother was right, but the knowledge sat sour in his stomach. When did everything get so complicated? When your wife decided lying was easier than having a hard conversation with her mother. After they hung up, Daniel went downstairs. Rachel was in the kitchen feeding Emma in her high chair. She looked up when he entered, hope and fear mixing on her face. I made coffee, she offered. Thanks. Daniel poured himself a cup and sat at the table. Emma reached for him, her face breaking into a gummy smile. He took her hand and let her grip his finger. I called a marriage counselor, Rachel said. I found someone who has an opening this afternoon. Can you get off work? Daniel looked at his wife across the table. 3 years ago, he would have said she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Right now, he felt like he was looking at a stranger. I'll make it work, he said. The counselor's office was in a converted house downtown. Dr. Sarah Martinez was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She sat across from them in chairs that were too comfortable, like she was trying to make them forget they were in crisis. "Tell me what brought you here," she said. They took turns explaining. Rachel's version emphasized her mother's control and her own insecurity. Daniel's version focused on the lies and the attempted fraud. Dr. Martinez listened to both without interrupting, taking occasional notes. "Rachel," she said when they finished, "you understand that what you did was a form of financial abuse?" Rachel's face paled. "I wasn't trying to abuse him. Intent doesn't change impact. You attempted to gain control of an asset that wasn't yours without your partner's knowledge or consent. That's financial abuse." Dr. Martinez turned to Daniel. "And Daniel, you're well within your rights to feel betrayed and violated. The question is whether you want to repair this marriage or end it." "I want to repair it," Rachel said quickly. "I'll do anything." "Daniel?" He looked at Rachel. She was crying silently, mascara running down her cheeks. He thought about Emma growing up in a broken home, shuffling between parents on weekends. He thought about signing divorce papers and splitting their life down the middle. But he also thought about lying awake at night, wondering what else Rachel had lied about, wondering when the next betrayal would come. "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me wants to fix this, but part of me thinks it's already too broken." Dr. Martinez nodded. "That's honest, and honesty is what got lost here." She looked at Rachel. "You spent 3 years building a false narrative to avoid disappointing your mother. But in doing so, you destroyed your husband's trust. That's not something you fix in 1 session, or even 10 sessions. That takes years of consistent, transparent behavior." "I can do that," Rachel said. "I will do that." "Can you?" Dr. Martinez's voice was gentle but firm. "Can you set boundaries with your mother? Can you choose your husband over her approval? Because unless you do that, this pattern will continue." Rachel opened her mouth, closed it. "I don't know how to set boundaries with her. She doesn't listen." "Then you don't have the tools yet to save this marriage," Dr. Martinez said. "And Daniel, you need to decide if you're willing to wait while Rachel learns those tools, or if you need to protect yourself and your daughter now." The session ended with homework assignments and a schedule for next week. In the car driving home, neither of them spoke. Emma had fallen asleep in her car seat, her head tilted at an angle that looked uncomfortable, but somehow worked for babies. "I'm going to do better," Rachel said as they pulled into the driveway. "I promise." Daniel turned off the car. "Your promises don't mean much right now, Rachel." "Then what do I do? How do I prove to you that I've changed?" "I don't know, but words aren't going to cut it. You've spent 3 years saying one thing and doing another. Why should I believe anything you say now?" Rachel's face hardened. "So you're just going to punish me forever?" "I'm not punishing you. I'm being realistic. You tried to steal my house, Rachel. You let your mother call the cops on me. Those aren't small things I can just forgive and forget." "I made a mistake." "You made a series of choices over 3 years that all pointed in the same direction. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern." They got out of the car in silence. Daniel unstrapped Emma while Rachel grabbed the diaper bag. Inside the house, the air felt thick with unspoken words. Rachel put Emma down for a nap and came back downstairs. Daniel was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. "I'm thinking about how my dad always told me to marry someone who made me better, not someone who made me question myself. And right now, you're making me question everything. That's not fair." "None of this is fair." Daniel looked up at her. "You want fair? Fair would have been telling your mother the truth 3 years ago. Fair would have been asking me before trying to add your name to my house. Fair would have been trusting me enough to be honest." Rachel sat down on the other end of the couch. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I need you to understand that I was drowning. My mother's voice in my head constantly telling me I wasn't good enough, that I'd married wrong, that I'd ruined my life. I just wanted her to be proud of me for once." And what about me? Daniel's voice broke. Did you ever think about whether I was proud of you? Whether I thought you were good enough? Because I did, Rachel. I thought you were perfect. I thought we were building something real together. But it turns out you were building a fantasy for your mother while our actual marriage fell apart. The words hit Rachel like physical blows. She wrapped her arms around herself and sobbed. Daniel watched her cry and felt nothing. 3 days ago, her tears would have broken his heart. Now they just made him tired. I'm going to Marcus's place for a while, he said, standing up. Emma's asleep. You've got the monitor. I'll be back in a few hours. Daniel, please don't leave. I need space to think. You said you'd do anything to fix this. Start by giving me that. He grabbed his keys and walked out, leaving his wife crying on the couch in the house he'd bought with dreams of forever. Marcus lived 20 minutes away in a small apartment near the university where he taught engineering. When Daniel arrived, his brother took one look at his face and handed him a beer. Talk, Marcus said. Daniel talked. He told Marcus about the counseling session, about Dr. Martinez's assessment of financial abuse, about Rachel's explanation in his own confusion. So what are you going to do? Marcus asked when he finished. I don't know. Emma deserves to have both parents in the same house, but I can't live with someone I don't trust. Those two things can't both be true, Danny. You have to pick one. Why can't I have both? Why can't Rachel just be the person I thought she was? Marcus set down his beer. Because she's not that person. Maybe she never was. Maybe you married an idea of her instead of the real her. The thought made Daniel's chest tight. I love her. I know you do. But love isn't enough when the foundation is broken. And your foundation is the house you bought that she tried to steal. That's about as broken as it gets. Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Emma's awake and asking for you. Please come home. He showed Marcus the text. His brother shook his head. She's using your daughter to manipulate you. You see that, right? She's not manipulating me. Emma probably is asking for me. Maybe, but Rachel knows sending that text will get you to come home. That's manipulation. Daniel wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because Marcus was right. He drove home slowly, dreading what came next. The house was quiet when he let himself in. Rachel was in the living room with Emma, building a tower of blocks that Emma immediately knocked down. Dada! Emma squealed when she saw him. Daniel scooped her up and held her tight. She smelled like baby shampoo and crackers. We need to talk about practical things, Rachel said quietly, like what happens tomorrow and the next day. We can't keep living in this limbo. What do you want to happen? I want to stay married. I want to work through this. I want our family to be okay. And I want to trust my wife. But wanting something doesn't make it true. Rachel stood up, leaving the blocks scattered on the floor. So you've already decided. You're giving up. I'm not giving up. I'm being realistic about what it takes to come back from something like this. What does it take? Time, transparency, boundaries with your mother, counseling, years of proving that you're who you say you are. Daniel shifted Emma to his other hip. And I don't know if you're capable of that. Why not? Because 3 years is a long time to maintain a lie, Rachel. That takes consistent effort. That takes looking me in the eye every day while deceiving your family. I don't know if someone who can do that can suddenly become transparent and honest. Rachel's face went white. You think I'm a liar? I think you lied. Repeatedly. For years. What else am I supposed to think? That I made a mistake. That I'm human. That I deserve a second chance. You do deserve a second chance, Daniel said quietly, but not at the expense of my peace of mind or my daughter's stability. If we stay together, it has to be because we've rebuilt something real, not because we're pretending the lies didn't happen. Rachel sat back down heavily. How do we rebuild? I don't know yet, but it starts with you calling your mother and setting boundaries. What kind of boundaries? The kind where you tell her she was wrong to call the cops on me, where you tell her this is my house and she needs to apologize. Where you tell her that if she can't respect your husband, she can't be part of your life. Rachel's face showed panic. I can't cut my mother out of my life. I'm not asking you to cut her out. I'm asking you to prioritize your marriage over her approval. There's a difference. Not to her there isn't. Then that's her problem, not yours. Daniel looked at his wife, really looked at her. Rachel, you have to choose, your mother or me, because you can't serve both masters anymore. It's destroying our marriage. Tears streamed down Rachel's face. Why are you making me choose? I'm not making you choose. Life is making you choose. Your lies are making you choose. I'm just refusing to pretend we can keep going like this. Emma started fussing, sensing the tension. Daniel bounced her gently. I need to think, Rachel said. This is too much to decide right now. Take all the time you need, but understand that every day you don't choose is a day you're choosing not to fight for this marriage. Daniel took Emma upstairs for her bath. He heard Rachel on the phone downstairs, her voice rising and falling in what sounded like an argument. When he brought Emma back down in her pajamas, Rachel was sitting on the couch with her phone in her lap, her face pale. I called my mother, she said. And? She hung up on me when I tried to tell her she needed to apologize to you. She said she did nothing wrong, that she was protecting me from a man trying to steal from her daughter. So she still doesn't believe the truth. I sent her photos of the deed, of all the documents. She said they were forgeries, that you manipulated them somehow. Rachel looked up at him. She's choosing not to believe me. So what are you going to do? Rachel took a shaky breath. I told her I can't talk to her until she acknowledges the truth and apologizes to you. She said in that case, she never wants to hear from me again. Daniel sat down beside her, Emma between them. I'm sorry. Are you? You wanted me to set boundaries. Well, I did. And now my mother has disowned me. That's not my fault, Rachel. That's her choice. But you're the one who made me choose. No, Daniel said firmly. Your lies made you choose. Your 3 years of deception made you choose. I'm just the one who stopped pretending we could live with it. Rachel buried her face in her hands. Emma reached for her, patting her mother's arm with chubby fingers. They sat like that for a long time, their daughter between them like a bridge across a chasm too wide to cross any other way. Outside, the sun set over the house Daniel had bought alone, the house he'd thought would hold a lifetime of memories. Maybe it still would, but right now, he couldn't see how. 3 days passed in awkward silence. Daniel and Rachel moved around each other like polite strangers, communicating only about Emma's needs and household logistics. They attended their second counseling session and barely spoke in the car ride home. Dr. Martinez had given them more homework. Rachel was to write down every lie she'd told and when. Daniel was to write down what rebuilding trust would look like. On the 4th night, Daniel came home from work to find Rachel sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread in front of her. What's this? He asked. My homework. Rachel's voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. Every lie, written down. Daniel pulled out a chair and sat. The list was 3 pages long, handwritten in Rachel's neat script. It started with, told Mom I bought the house, 6 months after our wedding, and continued through dozens of smaller lies. Times she'd let her mother's assumptions stand. Conversations where she'd deliberately misled. Financial discussions where she'd exaggerated her contributions and minimized his. At the bottom of the last page, Rachel had written, I lied because it was easier than being myself. I lied because I was afraid. I lied because I didn't think I was enough. Daniel read through the list twice. Each entry felt like a small cut, but together they painted a picture of a marriage built on sand. This must have been hard to write, he said finally. It was, because seeing it all written out, I realized how bad it was. How much I hurt you. Rachel's hands shook. I don't know how you can ever forgive me. I don't know either, but this is a start. Rachel looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. Really? It's a start, Daniel repeated. It's not forgiveness. It's not trust rebuilt, but it's acknowledgement. That's something. They sat in silence for a moment. Emma was already in bed, the house quiet around them. I've been thinking, Rachel said carefully, about what Dr. Martinez said, about me not having the tools to save this marriage. And? And I've been looking into therapy, individual therapy, not just couples counseling, to work on why I let my mother control me so much, why I thought lying was better than standing up for myself. Daniel felt something ease in his chest, not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe possibility. That's good, he said. That's really good. I'm also going to write my mother a letter. Dr. Martinez suggested it, explaining everything, setting real boundaries, making it clear that I choose you and Emma over her approval. Will she read it? I don't know, but I need to write it anyway, for me, not for her. Daniel nodded. They sat there at the kitchen table, Rachel's list of lies between them, and for the first time in days, Daniel felt like maybe they weren't at the end of everything. Maybe they were at a beginning instead, a beginning that acknowledged the damage, a beginning that didn't pretend the hurt wasn't real, a beginning that understood trust had to be rebuilt brick by brick, truth by truth, day by day. I'm still sleeping in the guest room, Daniel said. This doesn't fix everything. I know. And I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. Some days I'm going to wonder if this is worth it. I know that too. But I'm willing to try, for Emma, and because somewhere under all these lies, I think there's still the woman I fell in love with. I just don't know if she's strong enough to come back. Rachel reached across the table and touched his hand. He didn't pull away. I'm going to become that woman, she said, the one you thought you married. I'm going to do the work, even when it's hard, even when my mother makes me feel guilty, even when I want to take the easy way out. Words are cheap, Rachel. I know, so watch my actions. That's all I'm asking. Watch what I do, not what I say. Daniel looked at his wife across the table, with her swollen eyes and her 3 pages of confessed lies, and he thought about the house they lived in. His house, the one he'd worked so hard to buy, the one she'd tried to claim. But maybe, just maybe, it could become their house. Not legally, that would take time and trust he didn't have yet, but emotionally. A shared space built on truth instead of lies. A foundation solid enough to hold a family. Okay, he said quietly. I'm watching. Rachel nodded. She gathered up her papers, her list of sins, and stood up. I'm going to finish my letter to my mother. And Daniel, thank you for not giving up, for giving me a chance to be better. She walked upstairs, leaving Daniel alone in the kitchen of his house. He heard her footsteps overhead, heard the soft click of her laptop keyboard as she started writing. Outside the window, the street was dark and quiet. Somewhere in the night, other families were having their own struggles, fighting their own battles. Daniel wondered how many of them were holding on by threads as thin as his and Rachel's. But they were holding on. That was something. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How's it going? Daniel typed back. Still married, still trying. That's all I've got. Marcus sent back a thumbs up and a message. That's enough for today. And maybe it was. Maybe surviving one more day, choosing to try for one more day, was all anyone could do when their world fell apart. The big decisions, stay or go, forgive or leave, trust or protect, those could wait. For tonight, it was enough that he was here, in his house, with his daughter asleep upstairs, and his wife writing letters about boundaries and choices. It wasn't the ending he'd imagined when he bought this house. It wasn't the marriage he'd thought he had when he said, I do. But it was real. Messy and painful and uncertain, but real. And sometimes, Daniel thought, as he turned off the kitchen light and headed upstairs, real was better than perfect. At least real had a chance of lasting. In the guest room, he lay down on sheets that still felt foreign. Down the hall, he could hear Rachel's muffled voice. She must have called her mother. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone was firm, different from before. Maybe she was finally learning to stand up. Maybe she was finally choosing them. Or maybe it was too little, too late. Only time would tell. And for the first time since Patricia had called the cops on him in his own home, Daniel thought maybe he had enough time to find out. He closed his eyes and thought about Emma, about what kind of parents they'd be, together or apart, about what lessons she'd learned from watching how they handled this crisis. And he decided that no matter what happened with his marriage, he'd make sure Emma grew up knowing that truth mattered more than comfort, that integrity was worth more than approval, that love, real love, was built on honesty even when honesty hurt. Those were the lessons his house would teach. His house that might someday become theirs, if Rachel could prove she was worth sharing it with. If not, he'd raise Emma here alone, in the home he'd built before anyone could try to take it from him. Either way, the house would stand, and so would he. That was enough for tonight. The story of Daniel and Rachel isn't just about a house, or a lie, or a mother-in-law who crossed too many lines. It's about something deeper that lives in all of us, the dangerous space between who we are and who we pretend to be to make others happy. Rachel spent 3 years performing a version of herself that would earn her mother's approval. 3 years of calculated omissions and strategic lies, each one seeming small in the moment, each one building on the last, until the foundation of her marriage was rotting from the inside out. She told herself she was protecting her relationship with her mother, but what she was really protecting was her own fear of rejection. And in trying to avoid her mother's disappointment, she created the exact scenario she feared most, becoming the disappointment her mother always said she'd be. The first lesson here cuts deep. When you lie to avoid someone's judgment, you guarantee your own. Rachel's deception didn't free her from her mother's criticism. It enslaved her to it. Every conversation became a performance. Every interaction required careful monitoring to keep the story straight. She traded her peace for Patricia's approval and discovered that approval earned through deception is worthless. It's not really you they're approving of. It's the character you're playing. But there's a second, equally important lesson in Daniel's response. He would have been justified in walking away the moment he discovered the betrayal. The police showing up at his door, his wife attempting to add her name to his house without permission. These weren't small infractions. They were fundamental violations of trust. Yet Daniel chose to stay and see if the marriage could be salvaged. Not because he was weak or desperate, but because he understood something crucial. People can change, but only if they're willing to do the hard work of becoming honest. Daniel's lesson teaches us that forgiveness doesn't mean pretending the hurt never happened. It means acknowledging the damage fully and then deciding whether the person who hurt you is capable of genuine transformation. He didn't rug sweep Rachel's lies. He didn't minimize them or make excuses for her. He held her accountable while leaving the door open for redemption. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. The third lesson lives in the space between Daniel and Patricia. Patricia represents the toxic force in many of our lives. The voice that tells us we're not enough, that our choices are wrong, that we need to be someone different to earn love. She's the parent who can't celebrate their child's happiness if it doesn't match their vision. The in-law who undermines instead of supports. The family member who demands loyalty while giving none in return. What Patricia teaches us is this: some people will never give you the approval you're seeking, and destroying your life trying to earn it is the greatest waste of your potential. Rachel had to learn that her mother's inability to celebrate her choices said everything about Patricia and nothing about the validity of those choices. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is accept that certain people will never see your worth, and their blindness is not your burden to carry. The fourth lesson emerges from the house itself, the physical structure at the center of this entire conflict. Daniel worked for 3 years to save enough money to buy that house. 3 years of overtime and sacrifice and delayed gratification. The house represented his ability to provide, to plan, to build something solid. When Rachel tried to claim it as her own, she wasn't just lying about ownership, she was erasing his accomplishment, his sacrifice, his worth. This teaches us that relationships require respecting what each person brings to the table. Rachel could have said, "My husband bought this house before we met, and I'm so proud to build our life in the home he worked so hard for." Instead, she chose to take credit for his labor to boost her own image. Real partnership means celebrating each other's contributions, not stealing them to fill your own gaps. The final, most profound lesson comes from Emma, the innocent child at the center of this storm. Emma will grow up in a home where her parents chose truth over comfort, accountability over excuses, hard conversations over easy lies. She'll learn that love doesn't mean accepting betrayal, and forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened. She'll see that her mother made terrible mistakes and then did the harder work of owning them and changing. She'll watch her father extend grace without sacrificing his boundaries. Emma's lesson is the one we all need to learn. Your children are always watching. They're learning what love looks like by watching how you love. They're learning what respect means by watching how you demand to be respected. They're learning whether honesty matters by watching what you do when the truth is expensive. In the end, Daniel and Rachel's story teaches us that the person you pretend to be to earn approval will eventually destroy the person you actually are. That lies compound like interest, small at first, catastrophic over time. That trust is built in inches and destroyed in moments, but can be rebuilt if both people commit to the painful work of truth. The house still stands, the marriage survived, but only because two people decided that an honest, imperfect relationship was better than a comfortable lie. That's the choice we all face every day, the easy performance or the hard truth. And every time we choose truth, even when it costs us, we build something that can actually last.